Let's go now. Let's go. Let's go now. Let's go right now. We're going. We're going. We're talking 2020 NFL Draft Prospects. This is Dave and Bill with Gridiron 360. Thank you for listening. We just wrapped up a conversation on the few yet very important quarterbacks coming out of this conference. Mr. Joe Burrow, Mr. Tua Tagovailoa, Mr. Jake Fromm from State Farm. Now we are going to move into running backs, okay? We'll spend time on kind of the higher picks, but also mention some other folks. I'm going to run through. Sound good? Really the number one running back overall of all the conferences, not just out of this class, in this year's draft is the University of Georgia's DeAndre Swift. Swift guy. Let's see. Swift is a junior. He's from Philly. He's 5'8", 212-pound dude. Really kind of a do-all type back.
How tall is he?
He's 5'8", bro. He's not big.
Man, I knew it wasn't huge, but he just seemed like he was taller than that. Okay.
Yep. So I don't. We'll dive into each of those. Next guy. Of your national championship LSU fighting Bayou Bengals, Tigers, you've got Mr. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He is from Baton Rouge, a junior, 5'7", 207 pounds. You've also got a young man we talked a lot about early in the year who is, I think he might be a little bit of I don't want to say phenom, but like kind of freakish in what I've seen of him.
Yep.
Mr. Is it Keyshawn or Keyshawn?
I think it's Keyshawn.
Keyshawn, I think. Keyshawn Vaughn. From where, Dave?
He is from Vandy.
That's right. The smart person school is putting out somebody that I think could be a potential stud. This guy's from Tennessee. He's 5'10", 214 pounds. Other running back prospects in the SEC. University of Florida's LaMichael Pirine from Mobile, Alabama. He's a senior, red shirt. 5'11", 216 pounds. You've got a grad transfer from my Clemson Tigers over to the South Carolina Gamecocks and Mr. Tavian Feaster. He's a senior, 6 foot, 221 pounds from Spartanburg, South Carolina. You've got a teammate of his, Mr. Rico Dowdle, also a senior from the University of South Carolina out of Asheville, North Carolina. 6 foot, 215 pounds. You've got Scotty Phillips, running back from the Ole Miss Running Rebels, another senior at 5'8", 211 pounds. He's from Ellsville, Mississippi. And then you have Brian Harrion from the University of Georgia Bulldogs. He's a senior, 6 foot, 210 pounds from Douglasville, Georgia. A couple other names on the list. There's J.J. Wilson, a running back from, where did I say J.J. was? I think
he wasn't from Arkansas, was he?
No. I'll pull it up in a minute. And then you also have what was the other guy?
You got Scotty. You just did Scotty Phillips. J.J. Wilson. That's who I was thinking of when you said
fullback.
Yeah, he's a fullback.
Okay, yeah, that's why he's a fullback. I've got it right here. J.J. Wilson. Let us see. He is. I thought I had it right here, y'all. Maybe I don't. Oh, there he is. J.J. Wilson. He's from Auburn. He's Auburn. He's a 6'3", 243-pound fullback. Okay? So, let's start from the top. And again, we said he's probably the number one running back in the draft overall. But let's talk a little bit about, quite frankly, the running back factory. That is the University of Georgia Bulldogs and Mr. DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, here's kind of my thought on him. Before this year, there was, some chat about him, but he was not, there were certainly some names that were a little higher up. From my perspective, I thought he was coming into the year. This is coming in the year. I thought he was good. I didn't really see him, I guess, at that point as elite. But I want to say, Georgia's passing attack with Jake Fromm in the first 2 years was a lot more prolific than it was in 2019. And maybe some of that had to do with the fact that, that they just have more weapons on the outside. We kind of talked a little bit. We'll talk about wide receivers and kind of, who is out there. And you're not going to see a lot of Georgia guys in that list because their passing attack left a lot to be desired. Being from Georgia and living in Atlanta, I've definitely watched Georgia Bulldog games. There were games where with no passing attack, I watched this guy carry the team. And, I mean, I saw a guy that was elusive, guy that, kind of reminded me with a little less power, but still, I mean, you're talking about a guy, if he's 5'8", I mean, he's well built, so he's not little, but kind of has that versatility of Gurley, just very shifty, catches the ball.
He's not, to be honest with you, he's not the home run hitter back. That's not who he is.
No, but he picks up a lot of yards.
Absolutely.
In tough situations.
And he's a fast. I'm not saying he's not fast, but that's just not his game. I mean, he's very skilled when it comes to his tempo running the ball.
Yep.
His decisiveness. So he can run the ball inside and outside. He's got great timing for reading blocks and then hitting the hole.
And he's kind of guy like you've heard the term like can run in a phone booth. Like he's that guy. His vision is definitely elite. And again, I'm interested.
Great cuts. He has some great cuts. Very fast. I mean, he'll put his foot in the ground and boom, he can change direction.
He can, but what really, we've talked a little bit. Remember we were talking about the difference between a zone scheme and a gap scheme.
Yeah.
And one of the things about a zone scheme is you need a running back that has vision because there's a lot of cutbacks and they have to find the hole. This is a guy that can do that. He can definitely run
both.
Well, he can, but the idea is when you run a gap scheme, you're like, here's where the hole's supposed to be. Go and hit it. He has vision and patience.
Then you got to have a little vision to make a cutback.
Yeah,
That's all a zone blocking scheme is we're going to give you options. Mm-hmm. You have to have great vision.
You have to read it.
You don't have a lot of time. Those holes don't stay open forever, but you've got to have vision. And we're going to give you options.
Yeah, and when we got into games 3, 4, and 5, where all of a sudden it started to become apparent that there was something not good in the passing game for Georgia, he commanded a lot of attention. And yet, again, I saw games where he was 5, 6, 7 yards a clip on plays where it really looked pretty busted and was able to make things happen. So this is a guy I like. I mean, if you want to go early in the draft, and I certainly see him as a first rounder. As you mentioned, he's probably at this point
maybe the only running back taken in the first.
Yeah, but certainly I gotta believe he'd be first. It would be kind of shocking. And one thing I noticed when you were reading off all those stats, and we're talking about these guys, was there's not a lot of guys. I didn't hear you mention a lot of guys, especially not on the higher end of this, that are over 5'10". So there's. You had the two boys from South Carolina that were 6'. Right, but I think we both agree that they are mid to late round probably draft picks.
Yes. But those are in terms of size of the ones I mentioned. Yes, you're right. They're mostly about like 5'10" and under.
Yeah. Now I would look at this. First of all, the running back position in my mind, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, really got devalued. Whereas you remember seeing a running back go in the top 5 was not a shock.
Right.
The elite running back. But now,
Sean Alexanders of the world, things like that.
But now it takes a Saquon Barkley to really get into that front line.
Special.
Yeah, like where you got to be no doubt, because you get afraid of this, and you as a Giants fan probably have a little bit of fear of this, is shelf lives just aren't there for running backs. But I think there has been a value kind of put back on running backs. Maybe not so much in the dollar perspective, but about how they change your team, because now there was a kind of a loss of those 3-down backs because they didn't last very long. And now it's kind of, you're seeing teams really searching for that because we want to be more versatile, and certainly in the pass catching game. But this is a kid I think that can do it all.
Dual back. I mean, how many? Let me rephrase that. How many teams have that 3-down back?
Yeah,
because most teams are running platoons out there.
Yeah,
they've got guys to sub in, so like this is a kid that he can catch the ball too very well.
Yeah, and the problem becomes
run those 3 downs. Does he have the stamina? I mean, that's the big thing going from college to the NFL is the extra games you now have to endure, the longer season.
Yeah, the better teams, I think, from a running perspective, are the ones that have a second running back that is not the third down back, so to speak, the pass catching back, the pass blocking back. It's really more of the guys where you can run that second guy out there. And I'll use your guy from Clemson in New York, like a Gallman. Gallman can spell a guy for a series.
Yeah.
And that is more valuable because I remember, I'll take the Bears as an example with Jordan Howard, and then they got Tariq Cohen. And the feeling was Jordan Howard is more of a plotting, a little bit of a Clydesdale type back, high level vision and patience, but not fast, not terribly elusive. But the problem was putting Tariq out there on third down, you started to telegraph your offense. This is the kind of guy you don't have to telegraph your offense with, and that makes them very important. I think DeAndre Swift, I'd be shocked if he's not the first running back off the board, and I think he earns it. He's been durable. Georgia does, as you can see. We got another guy on here, a senior in Herian, who is he's known in Georgia circles as a kind of a real team player, will do whatever you need, and that's great. But that just shows you how good DeAndre Swift is, that he can do that.
Yeah,
know?
I mean, they have a bevy of backs there, man. I mean, think about, like, this is...
They got James Cook sitting in their
James
backfield.
Cook, Savon Clark, Ian Donald McIntyre, Prather Hudson, Darius Jackson, Garrett Jones, KJ McCoy, Kenny McIntosh, Anthony Summy, and Zamir White.
Yeah. Well, I think the feeling is it White they believe will be the starter, which is kind of interesting because James Cook has gotten some looks now. No, that James Cook is the little brother of Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
Doesn't have the lightning speed of Dalvin Cook. A little bit different back. I don't think is as talented as Dalvin, but he was highly recruited. And this kid found himself third on the depth chart this year coming in, and it wasn't even close with DeAndre Swift, certainly. So, this guy's elite talent, and you got to have some respect for Georgia when it comes to the running backs. They put some good backs. They put some good backs in the NFL.
They're one of the spots that, I think NFL teams look to. And quite frankly, for high school, because, Swift was a 5-star. For high school guys coming out that are running backs, that's a place that they aim for.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting to me is, I go back and I mean, even when Georgia wasn't that good, and I'm going to throw a name at you, a blast from the past, but something I've always noticed about Georgia, and more recently it's been really out, but like, do you remember a guy like Garrison Hurst?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that guy was supposed to be otherworldly, and he didn't have the huge pro career. He was decent, but they've always been able to do that. And obviously you can go back even further and look at a Herschel Walker. So this kid's just special.
All right. DeAndre Swift.
Good.
Let's move on to the next running back on the list, Mr. Clyde Edwards Helaire. He's a junior. He's 5'7", 207. This is a guy that I certainly think benefited from the advancements that the entire offense took with the quarterback, the receivers, the offensive line, the new offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator, whatever you want to call Joe Brady. At the beginning of the year, showed some stuff, but I think quickly, it didn't take long to really, Alabama game, enough said. Watch the tape on the Alabama game, and you really can see the stuff that this guy can produce for you.
Yeah.
And I think, and certainly, again, he benefited from everything around him. That offensive line at LSU, I didn't think was so great at the beginning of the year. They won, like, the offensive line group award at the end of the year because they were able to come together, as we talk about with a lot of teams. If you can come together as a unit entirely as the team and play for each other, they did a lot of that. And Edwards Helaire was he was a big part of that. Now, in the championship game, we were able to neutralize them for the most part from hurting us too bad. That was at the detriment of letting, Burrow and Jamar Chase get their stuff done. But in terms of a back, these guys, he's I think he has good vision. I think he's got the quicks. He's got a jump cut. I've seen him do it a lot. I don't think he's lightning bolt speed, but he is a tough kid that I think could, you could run him between the tackles very easily. His vision, I'm not sure how great. He certainly doesn't have the type of vision DeAndre Swift does. I think he has some, but I said he's good with his jump cuts, and I think he really is. He's a one-cut guy. in being able to. But in the NFL, everybody's fast. You might have to do more than just one jump cut.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be. Your vision is constantly got to be looking for holes downfield. I don't know if he exactly has that.
Yeah. Here's kind of. You know, I hate preseason rankings, but when it comes to a guy like this, I think we benefited heavily from preseason rankings, and here's why. If you looked at LSU's schedule beyond, or really, and took away Texas, the Texas game early in the year, we might not have had our eyes open to how good LSU was as quickly as we did when we saw Texas. So the good part was it opened our eyes quickly, so LSU all of a sudden became somebody to watch. Like, hey, is this a team that maybe could give Alabama a run for their money? And, you know, by the time that Alabama game rolled around, everybody was saying, like, well, can Alabama handle this team? So that was really kind of cool. The one I will say this, and this is nothing taken away from Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow put one of the most amazing seasons I've ever seen played out there, and statistically was phenomenal. But I'd almost tell you that Helaire helped that engine go a little bit more. And here's why. He was really an unknown entity, certainly in the national spectrum. I agree with you. Like, if I was to picture him in the NFL, I see him as a very solid second back. Could he be a number one guy, 3 downs? I don't know about that, but what I do see is a guy that was incredibly patient. But some of the things that really stuck me is, this was a team that was able to get at a minimum 4 to 5 yards on first down. And they didn't always run it, like obviously when they passed it, they were able to get 8, 9, sometimes, huge chunk plays. But this is a guy that never left them in 2nd and 9, 2nd and 11.
He's a leg driver, man.
Yeah,
I mean, if he gets hemmed up, you always saw him find a way by driving the legs to at least grab an extra yard or two.
Yeah, I never watched him. He didn't have a whole lot of what I would call easy runs that really stuck out to me. I watched him run hard runs, and that's meaning he's taking on contact, and that's what really impressed me about him, and I think put him in the national spotlight. At this point, what concerns me for him is he's the type of guy that he's better working inside to out rather than going outside straight out the gate. I can see what you're saying.
The speed of the linebackers in the NFL might be able to set those edges where he has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, like I said, he's got a pretty good jump cup, a pretty good quick step to reverse his momentum, and he's strong, and he's a leg driver, so that even if he's heading up, he'll get you a couple extra yards. But I some people think that he could be a 3-down back. I just don't know. That's something he'd really have to work into. He's not a guy you draft right out the gates. You're like, he's a 3-down back.
No, I would kind of, I think there's a ton of value in the running back position from the 2nd to probably the 4th round, maybe even into the 5th, depending upon how it falls. I think if you take that grouping outside of, I would say DeAndre Swift, let's just say everybody else goes last couple of picks of the 1st round through like the 4th round, I think he'd be in the latter part of that.
Yeah, because if he's not going to be a guy you're going to look at as, necessarily he can come in and start, let alone be a 3-down back, then you're looking at him, as either a backup or developing him to take that role. How many teams can sacrifice an early pick for that?
Yeah, and I think a fear is going to be, and I think it's going to be realized. I just don't know where. I mean, let's think about this. Offensively, you've got weapons, obviously Joe Burrow, Helaire. You got certainly some offensive linemen, though I wouldn't really apply. I'd stick more with the skill guys. But on the outside, you've got a guy like Justin Jefferson. You've even got Thaddeus Moss.
Chase.
So you're going to have what will probably come out is much like what we talked about with Alabama. Sometimes it was hard to figure out who was really anchoring a defense in some of those years and who were beneficiaries of those anchors. You're probably going to see some of that in this offense. Some of these guys are not going to live up to probably where they get drafted. I'm not necessarily sure that that'll be Helaire because I do think he'll be in the later grouping of that group. But you can't deny there was an explosion amongst several players this year onto the national scene from LSU's offense. And I think this guy's he has the right to be drafted in that area, and it won't shock me if he turns into a really solid back. but I would probably, if I had to pigeonhole him right now, would say he'd be a very solid backup, maybe like a 5, 6, 7-year guy, but that is kind of always that second fiddle maybe to somebody else. But he plays hard. I like him. I think he does a lot of things really well. I don't know that he does anything great.
Right.
Any one thing great.
Right. All right. Well, let's move on to the next guy on the list, Mr. Keyshawn Vaughn, kid that comes from Tennessee. He's a redshirt senior. Played it at Vandy, as we said. The Commodores of Vanderbilt, 5'10", 214. He, this kid coming out of high school was Mr. Football in Tennessee. Decided to go play in the Big Ten. Went to Illinois, and Jiminy Christmas, dog.